like the video, and don't forget to subscribe. Now, let's get started.
All right, what's going on, guys?
This is the Autel Evo 2 Pro, and if you have not seen a lot on this, prepare to be amazed because this thing is just crazy awesome. Let's kind of dig in these two drones that are absolutely awesome and see the differences between them and which is going to be the best drone on the market today.
As far as price goes, the Mavic 2 Pro comes in at $15.99, while the Evo 2 comes in at $17.95. As far as weight, we have 907 grams compared to 1,195 grams with the Evo 2. One of the biggest differences here, we have 31 minutes of flight time compared to 40 minutes on the Evo. Max speed on both is roughly the same, about 44 to 45 miles per hour. When it comes to video resolution, the Mavic 2 Pro comes in at 4K at 30 frames a second, while the Evo 2 has 6K at 30 frames a second. Both drones do have optical avoidance all around the aircraft, and respectively, both, as far as range goes, can go about 9 to 10 kilometers, about 5.5 to 6 miles in range. They both have an f2.8 to an f11 variable aperture, and both carry a 1-inch sensor with a 20 megapixel JPEG and RAW photo capability.
These might have 30-40 minute run times. You might think, why do I want to record for 30 minutes? You don't, because you don't want to land these things at 0% battery. So typically when it gets to about 50%, especially if I'm in the wind, I am bringing it home to land early so I don't run out of battery in there. So last year I was out in Iceland with the Mavic 2 Pro. Winds were so crazy. I dropped about 30% in battery just getting to where I wanted to shoot. So having a few extra minutes in the air actually shooting is massive.
So there's just some sample footage of the Evo 2 versus the Mavic 2 Pro, and I'll be honest with you, I was pretty impressed with the quality out of the Evo 2 Pro. But comparing the 8K version and what was out of the box and how it looks compared to this one, definitely the Evo 2 Pro, as far as quality-wise, came out really clean. Now, there are some things to consider when I was looking at some of the footage, and that is the Evo 2 just out of the box is very sharp. Now, it really depends on your preference, but a lot of times if you look at the footage and rewatch it again, you'll see that it is very sharp, and some people, as far as some videographers, some people like that, and some people don't like it. Now, the funny thing is that normally the DJI lineup is the one that's normally known to be a little over-sharpened. Now, this thing kind of takes it up 2 or 3 notches as far as how sharp it is. And in a way, it might be a little too distracting because a lot of things look a little bit too sharp in the video. And I know a lot of videographers like to have a little bit of softness in there first to then sharpen it up in post. So this way, you're actually going to be shooting with it a lot more sharp, and then you're gonna have to probably dial it down just a little bit.
Now, I do want to show you guys these two remotes because there's actually kind of a lot of difference between them right here. Now, both have a screen in them, but where the DJI just shows you some basic functions in this calculator style font, the Evo 2 Pro gives you a full color display. In fact, you can actually set it and see your image straight on here without a phone, which is not the recommended way of doing it, but you can do it if you need your phone for something else or don't have it with you. Now, ergonomics on them is kind of a toss-up for me. The Evo 2 kind of holds the phone a little bit easier, especially if it's in a case, and I'm loving having that screen here. My only complaint is that these cables are just really long and they kind of hang there with no good way of storing it, and it doesn't fold up quite as nicely as the Mavic 2 Pro, so definitely a size advantage to the DJI if you want to keep things small. Now, obviously, there's a lot of things that are really neck on neck in these things, and one is going to be range. I mean, both of these drones can fly tremendously far, like miles. I haven't had any issues with drop signals on either one of them. Both have been amazing for me anytime that I've flown them. Also, speed, they're really a couple miles per hour difference. You won't notice that difference unless you're racing these. I will say in the wind, the gimbal on the Mavic 2 Pro kind of freaks out on me. It can disable obstacle avoidance. It really doesn't like it. So while the drone flies remarkably well and even a little bit faster in the wind than the Evo 2, I will say the Evo 2 is actually able to record in those windy environments a little bit better, albeit a little bit slower, but at least you're going to get footage that is very usable and you're going to keep that obstacle avoidance on. Now let's get into the reason that you're probably here, and that is going to be for video quality and image quality. And that's because if you're spending $1,800 on a drone, it better be to make some awesome video for these. Now the DJI Mavic 2 Pro is the one that's kind of all over the place here, and there's a good reason for that. So, little explanation here. Both of these drones have a 1-inch sensor, which is one of the largest you can get in these small fold-up drones right here, which is incredible. Now, both of them have about the same resolution, which means for video, it is approximately a 6K sensor. Now, the Mavic 2 Pro does not record actual 6K, which is not a problem at all. But when you have 6K of resolution and you need to get a 4K image from that, basically you have a couple different options on there, and the one that DJI uses is a little bit lower quality. So it doesn't have the processing power to oversample all those pixels, and so it line skips or pixel bins or uses some lower quality way of getting that 6K video to 4K. That's kind of the explanation, sorry for that, but when we kind of get into the comparison for this drones, it makes a huge difference, because if you are recording in that normal wide angle full frame mode, or full sensor mode, I guess you would say, the Autel Evo 2 Pro is just way better in every way. Now, the Evo can also shoot 6K, and so yes, in that 6K mode versus the 4K maximum resolution of the Mavic 2 Pro, the Evo looks amazing. And if you start to throw the Mavic 2 Pro into that crop mode, which is their higher quality mode, things do get a little bit closer, but still, the Evo 2 Pro is going to be the winner right there. Now, the Evo can also shoot 4K 60, and that is huge for me. I use 4K 60 all the time, so it is amazing being able to use it. There is a crop in that mode, so just keep that in mind. I actually don't mind it, because usually if I'm shooting 4K 60, it's to slow something down in post, and when I'm wanting to slow something down, I'm usually trying to focus in on a subject, which means I actually prefer having a crop mode in that mode, but just something to consider if you're trying to shoot a very wide angle frame. 4K 60 is not going to be the ticket for you there, so you're going to be shooting in 4K or 4K 30 or 6K 30 max resolutions if you want that wide frame mode on that one. But the Evo 2 is still going to yield amazing quality. Now, if you want to get even slower than that, both of these can shoot 1080p, actually 2K on the Evo 2 Pro, and 1080p, which is a little lower resolution on the Mavic 2 Pro, again at 120 frames per second. But if you're going to do this, I highly recommend getting the Evo 2 Pro, because the difference in these modes are just night and day. The Mavic is just mushy, it falls apart, it's really not even usable in a lot of situations, whereas the Evo 2 Pro is much better looking, holds on to detail really well. So if you're using it for 120 frames per second slow motion, this is definitely a huge improvement there. Same kind of thing when we start to get into low light. The Mavic 2 Pro kind of falls apart really easily. In fact, at 400 ISO, I don't even think it's really usable for me. The Evo 2 Pro handles it a lot better, so I would say you're probably looking at about a one-stop better video. Now, both of these are still pretty small sensors, so 400 ISO is probably going to be pushing it for video, but definitely the better option, anything above 200 ISO, is going to be the Evo 2 Pro. First off, hats off to Autel for even giving a drone that can shoot full 6K video with a huge 1-inch sensor, 4K 60, and second, you guys are going to need some higher speed SD cards to be able to shoot this kind of stuff. So I did pick up these Lexar Professional cards. They have 120 megabyte per second write speeds. They've been perfect for these crazy demanding 6K, 4K 60 files. So go check them out. I'll leave a link in the description below. So quite honestly, if you are a video shooter here, I can't think of a reason that you would go with the Mavic 2 Pro with this one as the option here. The clear winner for video of all kinds is going to be the Autel Evo. And when it comes to still images, the differences here are a lot closer. I highly recommend them both for stills, but even so, I was seeing much better results both with your dynamic range and detail and low light ability with the Evo 2 Pro. In fact, look at these images here. The Evo 2 Pro is shot at 400 ISO with the Mavic 2 at 100 ISO. And honestly, I think the Mavic has a little bit more grain in those shadow areas there. So really showing the flexibility of the Autel drone, and overall when it comes to image quality, even though they're both very good, I would still give the easy edge to the Evo 2 Pro. Now, it is about $200 more expensive, so do keep that in mind. It is also a little bit larger of a drone, but nothing too unwieldy, and that is going to come with that bigger battery, better image quality for video and stills, and just overall a better drone right there. So for me, it was pretty obvious that the Evo 2 Pro is just a better drone all around, especially if you are a video shooter. The differences are really massive, almost uncomparable. It kind of felt like a pretty big downgrade showing the Mavic 2 Pro next to the Evo 2. And I'll be honest, that was extremely unexpected for me because I've been shooting so many amazing images and videos with the Mavic 2 Pro. So it's not like this is a bad drone or anything. It's actually pretty unbelievable.
And there it is, guys. That's my comparison of these two drones right here. This has been out for a year and a half now. This is pushing almost 3 years. Both great drones, both have a place in the airspace. So hopefully you guys got some value out of my experience that I was able to share with you guys. If you guys did, please don't forget to hit that like button, and also don't forget to subscribe, hit that bell to be notified when I post new videos. And links will be down below in the video description. And if you guys are looking at picking up one of these drones, make sure you guys use those links down below in the video description. Your support by using those links definitely helps out the channel. This is Autel with FlyPath.com. I'll see you guys next video. Take care.